Hello, and welcome to Your Take is Excrement.
This is Neo and
May.
yes,
Do you remember me?
I do. Although we are not in Texas anymore, so
That's one of them Wizard of Oz moments when you're like, oh shit, dude,
no shit.
I'm
You
not
have
in
to
Kansas anymore.
record a podcast, and you're not.
In a state that isn't the state that I was living in a week ago.
Yeah,
Which is strange. I'm going to say this. For the first time in my life, I have never, ever been in a position where I could both look outside and see a motherfucking mountain, the Rocky Mountains, by the way, out our window. We could just, like, literally see it. It's, like, right there.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm looking at it right now.
yes,
And also, my words can be captured onto a podcast about dumb porn.
what?
I mean, that's not our podcast. Our podcast isn't about porn, but it is about shit.
Yeah.
It's just very funny to see the outdoors being so lovely and not being in them. It's
Yeah.
very odd. I am having to be an indoor kid right now.
I have been routinely overcome with the urge, like, to be on top of things. And so it's like looking around outside. It's like, I want to be on top of that.
I want to go up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Well, and every time I get, like, if there's a building here where there's, like, a second floor, I'm like, bitch, get me on that second floor. I'd like to see the Rocky Mountains from there, please. Anyway, hi, everybody. I am still May. This is still Neo. The podcast is the same, only there has been one minor shift, which is that now we live in the mountains. So if we speak slightly slower or quieter, it's because we are at a higher elevation and we are adjusting. We have only ever lived, well, May has only really ever lived in Flatland. So that's sea level, baby.
Yeah.
So I've been bleeding from the nose pretty much constantly since I got here. But listen, we're adjusting. Things are improving, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's fucking Wednesday, my dudes. It's podcast day. Hi,
Yeah,
everybody.
it
I can't believe we made it to another one, but we are here for this is season 3, episode 2.
Yes.
Before we continue with the podcast, Neo, would you please tell the people that we are still sponsored by our homies?
We're sponsored by Machine Age Productions, an RPG hashtag iHunt. We're sponsored by Blood Thing, and we are also sponsored by Ambient Dream Studio. More about all of those later on in the show. We'd also like to thank our patrons over at patreon.com/excrement.
Yeah.
You can also catch us on Twitter at Angstrom or at Nukes Fears or at Your Take is X.
Yeah, I mean that's. Oh, I also want to shout out 2 things. Number one is May wrote a book. It's called Fluids. I've already sold 200 copies of it, so that's a fucking nightmare. But I'm working on getting more, and there's an ebook and stuff that I'm working on too. So the book will be available to you super soon, my baby child, my little baby bird. Don't worry, I'll let you read it. And number 2 is I can finally, people have been saying this for the last like 3 months where they've been like, I'm pretty sure I could hear some smoking going on. And so I just wanted to say this is now sponsored by the legal weed of Colorado, which is fantastic, where we don't have to lie anymore.
Yeah. We're not like,
We don't
this
have
is-
to pretend we don't enjoy the marijuana on the show.
Yeah. We don't have to deal with the this is Glassworks for smoking tobacco.
Right, exactly. Well, so there was a thing a few months ago on the podcast where someone was like, May keeps saying all this stuff about like drug use being like bad or not being like an ends or a means in and of itself, but like, what about cannabis users? Like, I use it to help my anxiety. I need it. And they typed this whole thing out not knowing that I too am medicated. So it's fine. Today we are doing an episode on Night of the Hunter, a movie that up until very recently no one has watched with drugs.
Really?
I don't know, maybe.
I feel like in the 70s people probably.
You think so?
Yeah.
You think this got passed around a bunch? So, wow, this movie is a big deal to me.
Yeah.
So the first time we watched this was what, year ago? Or so?
Thereabout.
Yeah. So the movie today is Night of the Hunter, which is a 53, right?
Something like that. Let me check.
I want to say it's 53, which is significant because Citizen Kane was around there. But if we're talking about like influencing cinematic language, there was a specific time in cinema history in that period of the 50s where it was like
55.
55. Okay. Well, so code era sort of slipping away, things changing, studios going from a more big budget bullshit program thing to maybe a more like minor, more independently run thing. Things were changing. The auteur's voice was still not even a word that people were using to describe directors. Like, auteur theory didn't come around until the 60s. So, but what people were talking about in the 60s in France about auteur theory, they were referring to people like Hitchcock and saying, like, you watch a Hitchcock movie, right? It's always a Hitchcock movie. It can't not be. That's auteur theory, right? It's like he is always going to make a Hitchcock movie. Mm-hmm. So you have to watch it kind of with that in mind.
Right. With the knowledge that he's a rapey monster and tortured his actors.
Exactly. So drawing a little line there is like you get to Orson Welles, right? Mm-hmm. Orson Welles is like the golden auteur for France. Like they fucking worship Orson Welles. And they worship Orson Welles because he mastered a lot of cinematic technique on Citizen Kane. That being like cinematic editing, Kuleshov effect, like picture-in-picture, how things can move, the way that an image can like be very stark and meaningful, almost like a painting, and every image of a film mattering and having something to say in and of itself. The mise en scène is a word that the French would use to refer to the things that Orson Welles would be very, very good at, like. And so mise en scène is basically the shit in the frame.
Right.
Very simply. But mise en scène, right? It's like, ooh, the shit in the frame. Mm-hmm. So, but very literally, it's just like, homie had the shit in the frame, and that was sick. And Orson Welles could not make a not Orson Welles movie. So everybody was always like, auteur theory.
Right.
But there was a time in America where this was not really something that people thought about, considered, or cared about. Matter of fact, I would argue a lot of people still don't give a fucking shit about auteur theory, and good for them.
And if they did, they would go see Morbius. That's right. This podcast brought to you by the Morb.
Oh my god. Well, so there it is, right? God. So Charles Laughton comes into this sort of in this interesting way. He's a theater guy. He directed theater. He swapped over to film for exactly one picture, and that was Night of the Hunter. Uno, he only did the one, and then promptly never made a movie again, and was a cinematic voice that was immediately lost. But the auteurism, just because there isn't a multiplicity of his shit, like there's not a big long lineage of Charles Laughton's stuff, doesn't necessarily mean that his impact is not felt in one movie and that he is not an auteur in the same way as Orson Welles. So the thing that I was trying to bring up in totality here, just to get all the way around, is that Orson Welles and Charles Laughton should be semi-synonymous names with a time period and an attitude. But people typically think of Orson Welles and not Charles Laughton because Charles Laughton only made one movie. Mm-hmm. But I would argue that Charles Laughton's influence was just as great as Orson Welles.
Right. Well,
does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and I think the way that it's been described to me before is like there's this convergence in cinematic styles between like Night of the Hunter inspired a lot more like
Abstract.
cerebral, abstract, almost psychedelic. Whereas
Right. And
as
Orson Welles is more the functional.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like, and there's a lot like you can do a lot of good shit with like the Orson Welles school of thought, but
Yeah.
like a lot of the things we really like the Jodorowsky, style of
Right.
art does
Comes
come,
more
like,
from Charles Laughton.
yeah, it's kind of like this is really the first movie to really like
Do that in America.
yeah.
Well, and like there was abstract stuff, like people were not entirely afraid of the concept of abstract, but abstractifying a visual image was very much new. Like the concept of two kids going down a riverboat singing while a bullfrog is like in the frame, like right next to the camera, like riveting. It's just like very stark, very abstract, very gay. They're singing, it's
Yeah.
well, my point is it's got this mise en scène, but it's not like a functional mise en scène. It's not like that. It's more just like a vibe factory.
Right.
And it also carries with it this like crazy purpose, but the way that it goes about doing it is this like long drawn out, overly poetic, but also absolutely horrifying thing. So yeah, that's the other thing is the movie is terrifying, but
And the message of the movie is like despite being made in the 50s and like a very specific, like here's an issue we're dealing with in the 50s and I want to address that.
Yeah.
It's still so fucking relevant today and it fucking sucks.
Well, yeah. So it's just like, it's like, what does the Great Depression look like for kids?
Right. Well, in how does, well, anyway, we're about to summarize the movie, but we just wanted to get all the
context
stuff out of the way.
Allow me to paint you the full picture.
Yeah. So yeah, children in depression and children when faced with like religious hegemony and shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So the summary of the movie. At the start of this movie, there are two kids, and their dad runs up to them, hands them $10,000, and is like, "You need to hide this.
I did a bad thing,
I did a
son.
bad thing. The cops are coming for me." So the father and the kids hide like $10,000 in the 50s money, which is a lot more money now.
$10,000 in 1950s dollars.
Yeah. So the cops show up, take him to jail. While he's in jail, he's gonna be executed, right? Because he like shot a dude.
Yeah.
He's like on death row. Yeah. So while he's on death row, he tells his cellmate about what he did and the money.
And that he hid some money.
That he hid the money. So his cellmate is a preacher who's like a roaming, drifting preacher who kind of goes like town to town.
Who is an absolute psychopath.
But he's like, well, and so the thing is, this doesn't really happen as much like these days, but it does like.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, it does like in Africa, and
yeah,
but
yeah.
You literally have people who just walk around the states, show up to churches and be like, "Hey, I'm a preacher. Can I do a sermon? Whatever."
Let me talk.
They talk, and then they like raise some money for themselves doing this. So a
touring preacher.
Yeah, and
like Aerosmith or some shit.
Yeah. So and it wasn't like necessarily like in the grand scheme of religious practices, it wasn't like a bad thing. It was just something that happened.
Right.
But some people would
they travel around, they preach the word of God.
Some people would absolutely exploit it, too, and so that's kind of like that's something this movie's about. That kind of
I got it. Leaning on the everlasting love, right, is the song. So the preacher, the whole movie is singing this song. Leaning on the everlasting love. So like the him singing that in his mind is like he gets to, because he is a man of God during the Great Depression, he can lean on that for security.
Yeah.
And the kids cannot.
So anyway,
yes,
the preacher gets out of jail, and so he goes to this community with the kids and just kind of like infiltrates the community. So he has this thing where he has knuckle tats.
Which
once,
nobody thinks is strange for some
no,
reason.
and so on one side it says love, on the other side it says hate. So he'll do a lot of he'll be giving a little impromptu sermon, and he'll
Let me
rest
tell you the
his
old
hand
story
on
about
something.
love and hate. Yeah.
Or anyway, so it's so functionally for him, it's something, a visual guide to his preaching. But then the movie will do all these things where he'll be talking and he'll just rest his hand on a counter and he'll say hate.
Yeah.
And so it's while he's being nice and being manipulative, but he's just it's just hate.
Right.
just popping out at you.
Right.
So he gets this community, he starts to infiltrate it. And then he gets married to the kid's mother. While the entire time he's being very, very abusive to the children, trying to get them to tell him where the money is. He gets married to the mother and then immediately starts being horrifically abusive to her.
Yeah. Well, because he doesn't actually intend to be with her in any serious capacity. He is just there to figure out where the money's hid.
Right. So, doesn't he kill the mother?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
he does.
Kills her and
he murders her
Yeah.
with a knife.
Yeah.
And then he puts her in her car and puts her at the bottom of a fucking lake. And it's the scariest shot ever, just seeing her floating, dead, bleeding body just in the car.
Yeah.
Underwater.
So anyway, but now he's the father of these kids, and everyone thinks he's this nice, godly preacher, while he's horrifically abusing the kids. So anyway, the kids then decide that they need to fuck off. So the kids then run away from him and go on this psychedelic, trippy, adventure, and then where they end up at this lady's orphanage kind of place where she's just taking care of kids. And she's also very, very religious, but she is she's religious in the opposite way of him, where instead of her using religion to try to exploit people and to abuse people,
she knows that it's a duty that she must help people because of it.
Yeah, so she's literally the polar opposite of the preacher.
When people say they can lean on the everlasting love, she knows that someone has to be there to be leaned on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then the hunter tracks down the kids because he's terrifying, and is going to murder them. So he shows up at the house, and as he shows up, the old lady walks out with her shotgun, and she's like, "You ain't touching these kids." And he's like, "Oh, I can wait." And so he's there's this shot where he's sitting in front of the house, and he starts singing the everlasting love.
Yeah.
And then she starts singing it back to him, but you see this through a window, so the kids are looking out through this window, and she's sitting there on the porch with a shotgun, and he's sitting outside outside the property with a knife. And they're both singing the same song at each other, about the everlasting love.
And so it's two religious people using religion to fight each other.
Yeah, but
the same one.
One is their religious beliefs are telling them that they have to sit on the porch all night with a shotgun to protect the kids, and the other one is trying to knife the kids. But anyway, so she ends up not fatally shooting him, right?
Yeah, she wings him.
She wounds him.
Yeah.
And so everyone finds out, and it's this whole big deal in the community. But then the community ends up siding with the preacher because he's a manipulative cunt. And so the community then decides that they have to lynch the kids because they were lying about the preacher.
Right.
And so they all get driven out of town.
Yeah. But it's okay because that is the persecution that comes with being caring.
Yeah.
Which is what the movie's really trying to say.
Yeah. So in summary, the movie is like, well, and I think originally y'all were like, this is a very like anti-religious movie.
I don't believe that's true. I believe that the movie is
has interesting takes. Well, that's what I thought it was going to be going into.
It's clarifying.
Right. And so the movie is very, very pro.
It's deist in general.
Yeah, it's pro religion, but it's pro like my religion drives me to take care of 18 orphans during the Great Depression, and is very, very against. My religion drives me to like
stab children and steal their money.
And seek money, and try to organize a lynch mob against children because I can't get money out of them.
Right. So like I think the end of the movie as well. There's like a couple of choice lines at the end of the film. There's a moment where a hawk swoops down and picks up a rabbit and eats it, kills it. And the old woman is like staring, dull-eyed out the window at the horror, and is just like, "The world is a cruel place to little things." And it's just like, I'ma cry.
Right.
And the same thing kind of there at the end, and this is referenced in the Coen brothers movies. This is referenced in Big Lebowski. Like clearly they like this movie,
right?
Because like all of their movies are kind of like this. But anyway, she's basically saying that the thing about children is that they abide.
Right.
Which is to say that, like, it's not about authority. It's about they want to do what is right, like what they're told is right.
Mm-hmm.
Adults don't. Adults will intentionally do what is wrong and justify it with rightness.
Right. And isn't the line where she's like, children abide.
Children abide. Well, and it's just like there's a simplicity, but also it's a genuine explanation of the disparity between what happens when adults don't have money and when children don't.
You mean when children do, or
no? Like, or... well, like the idea is that so my take on the movie basically is that the preacher and the children are in the exact same spot after a point. They both are dealing with the Great Depression and its woes. Neither have food or money or anything. They're both just traveling and singing and going along their way. They don't know where they're going. They don't know why they're going there, and they have no actual desires other than to not die. And the preacher is the same way. But what the children do to survive is very different than what an adult does to survive in that situation, right? Which isn't to say that this is inherent, but what I think the argument that the movie is making is that we should accept that children don't really have any ill intent,
right,
when they're trying to survive. And like adults can do the wrong thing to get survival, like to obtain survival,
right?
Which is just inherently distrustful, and it becomes difficult later in life to be supportive. So like I think the movie is about faith in the sense that like as a religious person in your 30s or 40s, what do you do with an evil fuck who believes what you believe?
Right.
What do you do with that person?
You wing him with a shotgun.
Well, the fucked up thing is like they're coming after children, right? And this seems to be weirdly objectively true. Careful there.
Yeah.
But anyway,
sorry, I'm just readjusting the microphone and smacking it with the
it happens. We're
wire.
We're improvising over here. Sorry. Woo! That was a big cough. Anyway, What was he saying?
Or people coming after children.
Oh yeah, well, so there's this tendency for whatever reason for the religious to go after kids. They want your fucking kids. They're trying to change your kids, convert your kids from what they are to what they want you to be. They have this like ideal child in their mind and they want you to be that. And then of course, like, it's no coincidence that is sexualized in a disgusting manner. So it's just like really not great
Right.
for children. And children, later in life, how are they supposed to react to religion
Right.
when it didn't protect them?
When I think something that this movie like is saying is it's like there's like a good way to raise children religiously, and there is a fucked up way to raise children religiously.
Yes.
Because the movie sees the old lady doing it as like a good thing, where it takes a lot of problems with the exploitation of the children by like the charlatan preacher.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that it's just like watching this movie just really like made me infuriated about the fucking charlatan. Like,
yeah,
I know that's the movie doing its job, but I was like fucking heated. I was like, God damn this motherfucker.
Well, so this movie is like the main inspiration for one of my favorite lyrics I ever wrote, which is just I have a lyric that's like, we used to be in Bible school, but now we're in the Bible, which is just like, I think people don't act like that, right? They don't act like they're currently partaking in that particular story.
Right.
Like, they think that story is something that happened, and now this means they are free to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. You're currently in the story.
Right.
You're a character in it.
Yeah.
So don't be a fuck then, right? And so, like, essentially, if you're going to be religious, you have to act like it.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, this is criminal attacks against children seem to be a lot more stereotypically Christian than just being Christian for some dumb reason.
Right.
But finally, somebody made a movie about that in, 1955?
1955.
Yeah, and it fell on deaf ears, and we still have the problem today. Now,
Right.
Isn't that great? Is it time for an ad break?
It's on that note, it's time for ads.
Yeah, it's capitalism.
Yeah. All right. What bit are we going to do this week?
Welcome, traveler. Can I pour you a brew? Are you new in town? Are you new here, sir? Sire? Let me pour you a brew.
Yes. What
Are you looking?
What would you recommend to do in this here town?
Well, we got a lot of monster hunting, but only on an app. But what if the app was secretly a game?
A game. And what's that? What's this app called?
Hashtag iHunt. Doesn't that sound like monster hunting in the gig economy?
Ooh, yes, and I assume to play this game, I need to round up several of my friends.
Your cohorts, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Get your cohorts together. Don't dilly-dally.
And what is there to watch on the moving parchments here in this town?
Oh, the moving parchment, yes. Classic moving parchment. We have a wonderful moving parchment artist that makes something called blood thing. It's interesting how they take different pieces of parchment and make them move independently of each other.
And what parchment congregator would it be on?
YouTube.com is where you can find that one. And
Or also in their links in the description.
what's the description? I'm gonna lose my mind.
Now, if I wanted to put some parchment on my wall...
Oh, I have another parchment artist just for you. Let me tell you all about them. If you go over to Ambient Dream Studios, there's a blacksmith over there that'll smith you the most beautiful psychedelic painting your little mushroom-stained eyes will ever have fucking seen. It's like a beach covered in beauty. Seriously.
All right. Also, check us out on patreon.com/excrement.
Oh, yeah, and buy us a brew over at
Yes.
patreon.com/excrement. And make sure to buy my book, Fluids, which is a book about pee. Anyway, let's return to... It's not actually about pee.
It's about everything else, though.
It is. I went everywhere but pee. Yeah. And we're back, everybody. That was something else. Night of the Hunter is still on the TV right now. We're watching it. It's great.
It's great. Well, and so, talking about how, religious oppression of children, I think that's definitely something that we're seeing like a rise of in like states, with like the religious right just like fucking attacking trans kids for no goddamn reason.
Oh yeah.
With the religious right, stealing kids from the concentration camps to give to WASP motherfuckers so they can adopt them.
Yeah.
The absolute like tragic state of like postnatal care in America and just like overall care for like mothers in America is just horrendous. Right. Like, so, and this is all shit that's like propagated by and done by like mostly the religious right. And it's just like, and that's something this movie speaks to a lot. And it's like, and then whenever there's something where it's like, when there's something kids, it's like a kid is on one side and there's an adult on the other. Instead of evaluating, the kid is saying how they need to be protected. Instead of saying, well, let's protect the kids in the way that the kids are saying, they will take the side of the abuser and just fucking attack kids. Like
right.
With what was that school shooting where the Republicans just like went nuts against the kids? It was in Florida.
Was it the Parkland?
Yeah. It's like where it's like the Republicans trying to protect kids until they say something you don't like, and then you try to get them to kill themselves.
Right.
Or it's just like, I don't know. It's just this trend that like that he saw in the fucking 50s and was like, I need to say something about this. And it is still going on. And it's
right.
It's like, what the fuck is with this like right-wing, cultural Christian like
justification
Christian
for whatever the fuck they want
of like kids are my property. If a kid has a different viewpoint than me, fuck them. You know?
Hey, can you put that in the freezer real quick? Thanks. You want to cut out this part where I'm like, can you put that in the freezer?
Nope.
Anyway.
We just got some food delivered. We're gonna eat it after the podcast.
We sure did. We're super excited. Anyway,
no cuts. You can't cut audio, May.
That's true. You can't edit audio. It's true. We were talking about Charles Laughton's classic Night of the Hunter.
Yeah.
But I think that this is usually the portion of the podcast where we apply what we're talking about to real life. And I think I can say this, having grown up here and having heard a lot of this shit, and I connect with this movie deeply because of that. I mean, I love the idea that the movie is about a preacher who's a hunter, right? The preacher is the hunter.
Yeah.
Not someone you should trust. You know what I mean? Is a hunter.
Just like that one movie with the guy from 300 about like Machine Gun Preacher.
Oh, yeah.
Except that movie is...
yes.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
You know what? It's all right. So when I was growing up, I always heard the narrative go a little something like this. Jesus Christ died on a cross in order to forgive everyone of all sin, prior and post the act, as sort of like a justification, perhaps, for the morality of humanity, to say it's okay, you can't be evil, really, if you follow Jesus, because Jesus has forgiven us of all prior and post sin.
Right.
And now I understand that this is a very bad way of looking at this,
Yeah.
but this is as basic as I can make it, the way it is told. And so at that point, it's like, well, it's not a question of whether or not I want to believe that that's true, like that's some sort of absurdity. Because look, life is absurd. Many things are absurd. And truly, a lot of things are very possible. So, like, what does it mean is the only question I ever ask. You know, and so religion, I don't care if it's true to me, if I feel like it's true to reality. I care if it changes people from being bastards into being good people generally. And I find that religion has a tendency to turn good people into bastards.
Right.
And it turns good people into bastards because it tells them that Jesus Christ died to justify every sin of their parents and every sin they will commit, and also every sin their children will commit.
Right.
So they think they can do whatever they want global warming wise because God, Jesus, died to justify everything. So they would, the earth would never dare fight back,
right?
Because this is already long predetermined and justified.
Well,
and slavery is fine. It's fine that it happened. Get over it. Move on, because it's justified.
Well,
the sins have been forgiven. They were long forgiven. Okay, and our kids are gonna go fight in space war and kill each other, but who gives a shit? Because they're forgiven, right? So now you get this problem where this motherfucker exists, like, and this is like just everybody for some reason. Like millions of people are exactly this motherfucker who's like, yeah, I mean, fuck everything.
Yeah.
Fuck it all.
Well, but and what's really frustrating about that specific take on like theology, Christianity, is it's so fucking wrong.
It is a sin.
It is. Well,
it is
like,
a sin.
Like Jesus,
if
like,
anything
there's literally a point, and I can't remember what Jesus did before this, but there's literally a point where Jesus forgave someone of their sins, and like, what should I do? And he's like, go and sin no more. Like, but he's like, you're forgiven. Don't fucking sin. Like try not to do it.
If you could stop. Well,
and there's like there's a lot of it's like, well, and even, you know, like there's a lot of like, hey, you know, you're forgiven. That's great. Live like it. Like, don't,
right.
Like there's a lot about it's like if you're forgiven,
don't live like a guilty person.
Don't carry your guilt.
Yeah.
Like don't carry your shame, but at the same time, like don't go back to the shame.
Right.
You know, and it's,
and don't justify, don't defend your shame.
Right.
Live a shameless life.
Yeah, like
acknowledge the past.
Yeah, and it's like you know, love your neighbor and like literally like love children, where you know Jesus
help people.
Like literally Jesus is like, you see these children, you should like that's good. Children are good. Having a childlike innocence is a good thing. Like don't
corrupt that.
Yeah,
don't ruin that, and don't fucking give them some motivation that'll like ruin the remainder of their life.
Right. Well, and even if like you know Jesus doesn't really do hellfire and damnation very much when he's talking.
Yeah.
But he's like woe to those who fuck with children.
Yeah.
Like that's the line. Is like, don't fuck with the kids, yo.
Right. Well, and like, you know, I think the thing is we can kind of like go back and forth on the Bible, because I feel like you know, there's so many people out there nowadays that are like, we should probably just not be thinking about this at all because it's just not good for us as a society. We seem to handle this badly. And I think that's somewhat fair. But I'm leaning toward the side of finding meaning in things that people believe, regardless of if they believe
Right.
it. So a lot of the justifications one can find, for any shitty, stupid bullshit action is literally right there.
Right,
You can just sort of look, it's right there. And so why pretend it's not? So I'm very interested in religion for this reason.
Yeah, well, and also I think a lot of the problems people have with religion are more just problems with human nature.
Yeah.
Where it's like, and I'm not trying to whitewash anything like the church has ever done. Like, it's like the church has done a lot of very, very, very fucked up things. And I'm not trying to like
almost exclusively.
Right.
I would say the margin is 99-1.
Right. But if you look, it's like, in like, like Stalinist Russia and in like Maoist China, you also had a lot of very, very fucked up things that happened despite them being like very, very atheistic. And so it's like, how it's like, and I'm not trying to argue one way or another. I'm just saying it's like, I think a lot of the problems inherent with religion are inherent with all religion.
Human morality.
Because humans, tend to just kind of suck sometimes.
They do weak people shit, and then they get themselves fucked up and they fuck up other people.
Right.
I mean, that's just like a fact of life.
Which is why I'm like, I really, really like and kind of like firmly believe the existentialist bit where you have to constantly be really reevaluating your belief system to make sure, your actions, just to make sure you're like on the right path, because you don't want to be like just zealously doing something that's not right, that you could figure out is not right if you had self-reflection.
Right.
Like my favorite Kant book deals a lot about that, where Kant's like just yelling at these Christians who are just like doing fucked up things despite their own religion saying not to, and he's like, why the fuck won't you just like look at your own fucking rules? Mm-hmm. He's like, what the fuck are y'all doing?
Right. Well, and it's like it's a club. It's like we got to maintain a club. Instead, it's I don't know. So the idea here is just that there's a big dividing gap between doing what's right and doing what you think aligns with your faith.
Right.
And like faith, it turns out, is just kind of like anything. It can be used however you want to use it. And some people use it to justify helping other people. They say it gives me a duty. If I am going to believe this, I'm not going to full-heartedly support something. I'm going to dedicate myself to helping other people. And whether or not it's bullshit, it's noble. And nobility is a lot better than not nobility, I suppose.
Right.
And compare that to like people who saw sort of God and religion as an opportunity to do whatever the fuck they want, because God's looking out for them.
Right.
And so the thing is, I think there's a bit in this movie, right, where the woman knows that God is not looking out for the kids. She is.
Right.
Therefore, God is.
Right. Like God is working through her to protect the kids.
Yes, exactly. And that is like her entire acceptance of religion, is that her role is to be a piece of God to take care of these children.
Right.
And Homie looks at God like it's his best friend who helps him kill hookers.
Right.
That's a very spicy and very accurate depiction.
He looks at God the same way Kevin Smith looks at Jason.
Oh man.
Call back.
Hey, speaking of callbacks, I don't want to do this right now, but I'm going to do this right now. So this week, somebody brought up to Kevin Smith because we said the thing about Clerks where he did the trans like hermaphroditic porn, like he was watching hermaphroditic porn. We mentioned how that was like progressive. And apparently somebody tweeted it at him. Somebody fucking said, hey, homie was into hermaphroditic porn. You've always been a supporter of trans rights. And Kevin Smith ran with that on Twitter and said, yeah, I've always been woke. Randall was into hermaphroditic porn and is into trans women. Ha ha ha, I'm woke as fuck and always have been. And I just simply replied with, and then you made him say every racial slur against black people to Wanda Sykes in the sequel. So, the king of woke.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kevin Smith has completely given me a nervous breakdown at this point. I can't even look at his tweets. His face, he makes this face that's like it's kind of like a surprised nerd. It's like this default state. It looks like he just saw like R2-D2. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
for the first time. Like, and he's got it down to a science. Like he can pose his face in the perfect way to make it look like he just saw R2-D2 for the first time. And I'm going to call it the podcast face.
It's kind of the soy face.
Oh, come on. Yeah, I mean, like, you know what? Yeah, a little bit. It's a little bit that, sure. But primarily it's the podcast face, and it's Kevin Smith's podcast face, and I sure hate it. Anyway, we need to get back on topic.
And I'm just gonna hit the microphone again.
Okay,
my little grate.
Fucking solid. So anyway, back to our podcast faces. Make the podcast face. Let's continue. So
whoa, R2-D2.
Whoa, I'm at fucking what's that Star Wars convention? I can't even remember anymore. Everything sucks.
What is that Star Wars convention?
I don't even think anybody likes Star Wars anymore.
I don't like Star Wars.
You do?
I like Star Wars.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, Neo. Okay.
Me and about 8,000 Dylans on Facebook.
And about 10 Kyles I've dated. All right.
No, so it's just like, it's so frustrating, like watching art made forever ago, like optimistically look at issues and be like, well, maybe we'll fix them in the future. And then being 70 fucking years later and, opening Twitter and seeing it's like Tennessee to allow 10-year-olds to get married. It's like, God.
Religious justifications. God, you can't say shit about it.
Damn it.
But trans women have to endure a genital inspection before they can pee. And they're thinking about just installing a third bathroom called Auteur. Like, this is something I saw. This is not this is real. And so the idea is they are literally considering doing a straight up segregationist approach to the bathroom thing, so that trans men and women and non-binary people will be all peeing in the same bathroom, which is going to be the horniest, sexiest bathroom of all time. You're going to go to that McDonald's and there's going to be like 4 trans people banging in that bathroom just about constantly. So I don't know if I think that one's going to backfire on them. That sounds like a great place to meet people.
Honestly, like I think the idea of a just anyone can shit or piss into your bathroom is good. So it's like the meme where it's like the worst person accidentally makes a good point. It's like, yeah, I do think we should have non-binary bathrooms.
Yeah, I do think everybody's just kind of pee wherever. Who cares? Like, who gives a shit? Well, and people are like, well, how do you police the bathroom? And it's like, you don't police the bathroom.
It's like, hey, fun fact, more Republicans like have been where like Republican like politicians have been arrested for inappropriate conduct in bathrooms than like trans people, just full stop.
Well, and who's
yeah.
shocked by that?
Oh,
Nobody.
no one.
And like every religious figure
Protect
that you
the
see
kids.
on TV, you throw a rock and they're a pederast, right? So
Protect the kids. So
they all
Matt
want a
Ga-
child bride.
Protect the kids so Matt Gaetz can get to them.
Yeah, I genuinely think we might be at a point where the Tennessee thing is being passed just so that Matt Gaetz can go do what he really wants.
Can get married.
Yeah, he can go get married like he really wants.
I feel like Matt Gaetz would be like, well, technically I'm not a pedophile because I'm attracted to teenagers.
I'm sapiosexual. So
I just wish I could do the thesis of this movie, whip out a shotgun, and just fucking wing some of these people.
yeah, well, yeah.
Allegedly,
I mean,
hypothetically,
and I mean,
theoretically, this isn't a threat of violence.
But this is this does have a lot to say about religious and political violence.
Yeah,
Like what it's good actually, and how it's good, and we should try it.
Well, it's how it's good when you're shooting like an abusive child abuser. It's bad when you try to lynch children.
Yeah. Well, and so like leaving Texas, right? We faced a fuckload of adversity. Nobody wanted to make it easier on us. Everybody was your parents were great. I'm
Shout
sorry.
out to Paul and Donna.
Hey,
I love
y'all are great. Sorry, I'm mostly talking about my my mom, but also like just all my just friends and shit. It was just hard, and so the bit was it was just like nobody really made it a lot easier. It was just kind of like we had to be alone with it, and we're kind of fucked, and everybody had like a dumb bullshit opinion about how it was like the worst idea, and it's just like action is good. Action is good. If you're unhappy, right? If you're getting fucked around by the religious and political figures in your state, move.
Yeah.
Consider moving. That's what they want you to do. Like they literally tell you, we're doing all of this so you will leave the state. We want a white, hegemonist state. That's what they've said for the longest time. They don't want diversity. They don't want you. And I know that there's a duty to do that, but also I'm sick and tired of going to places where I am hated and trying to fit in.
Well, and it's also like
they don't want me there.
It's like,
help me leave.
There's so many studies about how inclusivity in like states just helps every part of the state, like economically, like socially and all that. So it's like if you want to shoot yourselves in the fucking foot, all right, y'all.
Yeah,
like,
they're literally doing it to themselves. And it comes to a point where it's like, action is good. I'm sick of being mistreated by my state, so I move.
Yeah.
I don't want this person to hurt me, so I protect myself. Like, this is, I mean, if anything is like biblical, right? It's the idea of going, if I need to leave, I should be able to do that. I should do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, more so than that, like pretty much everywhere in the Bible, and this is one of those concepts in like the Old Testament that also carries over the New Testament, which isn't very common, but it's like if you're gonna do anything, be nice to the sojourner, the widow, and the traveler. It's like they had like laws about how you could like sow your fields, and you had to leave stuff in the fields so that widows and like sojourners and travelers could go get food from your fields.
Right.
So it's like
because they couldn't get it themselves.
Yeah.
Like
So
you have to prepare for. Well, and we act like homelessness is a choice that people make, and we don't need to endorse that shit. And it's not that. It's literally they can't not, and society has that inherently in it, and you need to prepare. You need to budget for helping them.
Yeah. Well, and like one of the most harrowing parts of the Bible for me and it should like terrify everyone who actually like who like genuinely believes, in the Christian faith. But there's a bit where it's like everyone's at heaven, everyone's in heaven, and there's all these people who are like yay, we're Christians, and Jesus is like, yeah, when did you feed me? And they're like, what? And he's like, when did you like clothe me or give me shelter? And they're like, we never saw you, Jesus. We couldn't. And he was like, whatever you did to the least of you, like however you treated the homeless is how you treated me. So it's like, and then he literally divides everyone where he's like, these are all the people who treated the homeless well, who gave the homeless food, clothes, shelter. They're going into heaven. Everyone else doesn't. Like, yeah. So in like there's literally a passage where Christ is like, if you don't treat the lowest of the lowest people in your society, well, if you don't treat them like you would treat Jesus fucking Christ, you failed. Like, you flunk out. Like, that's the fucking bar,
right?
So it's like that. I don't know how people how Christians who are like, well, the homeless should just work harder. I don't know how they don't read that verse and are fucking scared shitless.
Well, and
because like I do everything I can for everybody, and I'm still scared shitless.
Right, exactly. Well, and you said sojourners, widowers, and
travelers,
and travelers. Yeah. So like who amongst us isn't one of those at a time?
Yeah.
I mean, that is inherent. And also, understand that like a lot of people in society very literally can't. I saw this post on Reddit like a week ago, and it was the first time I ever agreed with something I like saw on Reddit, and I was like, oh, finally. But somebody said, I don't give a shit or a fuck if 90% of people on welfare do not need that money and are just buying cars with it. I don't give a dick of it, because if 10% of them are going to starve to death if they don't get that money, they should get that fucking money. And I don't care how abused that system is. Abuse the shit out of it. Because as long as those people, the derelict, the people that need it, have what they need, who cares?
Yeah.
It's successful. You did it. Good job.
Yeah. Well,
it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be a decent system. It just has to make sure that some people get food when they didn't have it before.
Yeah.
Pretty simple. Night of the Hunter.
Night of the Hunter. I mean, I will say, like, the movie is overall pretty depressing, but like the good religious character, the lady who takes care of the kids, I can't remember her name. She does like give me give me hope.
Well, yeah, it's like the movie makes you genuinely despair for a very, very long time, and then fills you with answers. Like it gives you the beginnings of answers. It's like, here's what you can really kind of expect. And also like, here's how you should maybe consider governing your life if you want to continue to call yourself a Christian, and understand that if you're not doing that, you're probably just being a manipulative prick that's trying to either fuck children or steal money.
Yeah.
The two classic moves by Christians for some dumb reason. They all want to be bankers and pedophiles, and I don't know why. It's just like Jared Leto. Morbius coming. So this has been a secret ad for Morbius, the newest film by a man known as the scariest person on LiveJournal, Jared Leto.
I don't know why like known pedophile Jared Leto keeps getting jobs.
Known pedophile Jared Leto.
Like, anyway, all right.
Yeah, no, it's fine. All right, well, I guess we're going to call this one a podcast.
Yeah, we are.
We're going to go eat some motherfucking cheap,
boigas,
cheap, shitty burgers and cheese curds, and we're going to, we'll pay our taxes, pretty much. That's, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. More shit coming soon.
Yay!
Bye,
All right.
y'all.
See y'all later.
Patreon.com/excrement. Why did I say it like that?